Yeah, so we have Madam Lalita Suresh. Welcome, ma'am. Lalita ma'am is an educator with a vast experience of working and leading international and CBSE schools for over 33 years. She has been employed in GEMS education for over 30 years. As an eminent member of senior leadership team in international and Indian schools, Lalita ma'am has a notable experience of blending international best practices into the CBSE curriculum. Essentially a physics graduate, Lalita ma'am pursued her interest in education at an early age by undertaking her bachelor degree in education from St. Teresa's Institute of Education, Mumbai, and later in life, a master's degree in leadership and educational management from University of Bath, UK. She's passionate about giving her students the best experience in school, and her innovative leadership has been well appreciated by students and parents. Her love for the environment, arts, sports, and creativity using technology manifests in every staff and student of her school. Lead collaborator, principal identified by CBSE and leads at cluster schools in the region. We welcome you, ma'am. Thank you for being here today. We have Mr. Vijay Gogoi, who has vast experience in solutioning and talent development, learning and consulting projects in India, US, and ASEAN countries. He has advised Fortune 100 blue chip clients on strategic talent and L&D issues and led the implementation of their large initiatives. Majority of his experience has been in the telecom, financial services, and retail industries in India, US, UK, Indonesia, and South Africa, and in organizations like Accenture, Genpact, and iServe. He is currently the executive director and lead at KPMG Academy. He is an electronics engineer from NIT Rourkela and MBA from MDI Gurgaon and a certified human capital strategist from Human Capital Institute, USA. Who better than Vijay sir to tell us how to develop human capital of India via school education. And then I welcome our last but not the least panelist, Mr. Praveen. Mr. Praveen B. Vudugiri is the founder director of Creya Learning and Research, which is an innovative organization pioneering 21st century learning in India through a studio-based integrative STEM program. Over 50,000 K-12 students in over 100 private and government schools across India are being inspired to become innovators through their organization called Creya, which is a STEAM education, design thinking, and 21st century skill learning program. Praveen sir has been instrumental in designing and developing Creya Excel program through integrative STEAM approach. He has proven expertise in building and mentoring high-powered teams and has proven expertise in building and mentoring high-powered teams and has been the director of the prestigious Triology University in US. Praveen sir has graduated with Bachelor's of Engineering from one of India's leading university, and he opines that in today's education system, where success is defined by performance in standardizing tests, children have forgotten the joy of learning. Education is seen as ticket to land in a cushy job, but is not perceived as a means to empower children to fulfill their potential. At Creya, Praveen is excited about helping the learners of today rediscover the joy of learning, collaborating, reflecting, and designing basic percepts to help them unravel all the challenges of life and excel as leaders, innovators, and change makers. He firmly believes that empowering our future generation to excel in life and to live their dreams is the key to prosperity and a happy nation. Welcome, Praveen sir. So, I would like to give you a snapshot of today's webinar. We have we received close to 800 registrations, and still people are joining in. We have about 183 people who are here, 184 now. It's the count is increasing. And we are live on YouTube and Facebook. And I request, a lot of people had issues in terms of getting the link and all. We're not a professional digital media release company. So we are an education company, and we're just trying to make a difference here. And I would request you all to save our mail IDs and our WhatsApp numbers via which you get the messages, so that next time you can be a part of our broadcast. So to start today's discussion, I would like to ask my first question to Lalita ma'am. Ma'am, the government has come up with a new education policy. As per you, what is new in the NEP?
Sorry, I was in the mute. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the warm welcome. It's a pleasure to be addressing so many eminent educators in this panel. See, the earlier policies just focused on access to education, female education, equity in education. But the current education policy is a storehouse of, I would say it's energetic. It is an energetic policy. It's completely revamping the current existing education system so that Indian children can compete with any other child in the world. It is as good as or even better than some of the well-known curriculums that we know of. It's basically talking about integration of subjects, the choice of subjects. The children can choose, even though in the earlier policies as well, we never had actually streaming and things like that were never there. But schools did the streaming based on the convenience of how to run an effective timetable. But I think we got to come over the aspect of boxing our children and making them study what we want them to study rather than them choosing what they want to study, and how they can absorb what is there. So it's all about integration of subjects, the choice of subjects, progressing as per the needs and the abilities of the child, understanding the child. Does it cater to every child? The varied assessments, the modified assessments, and not the focus on examinations. There is no point of getting high marks, low marks. It's meaningless. It's all about what I know. Does the examinations cater to what the child knows rather than what the child does not know? And looking for what the child knows and building up the child's capacities from what they know rather than building up capacities from what they don't know. It's a very, very important aspect. And I think this national education policy, if it is implemented in its true sense, the true essence that it has been written, then it will take India to a much, much higher level. And we will very soon have children coming from all over the world to adapt to this curriculum. It's brilliant. As an educator, I'm excited. And there are some challenges on how we are going to train our teachers, how we are going to implement it. But if it is implemented in the right spirit, I think it will do wonders for our kids. It will do wonders for our nation. I think it's a brilliant policy, and I look forward to its implementation. I think quite a number of progressive schools, we've already been implementing a lot of it. So a lot of this, what is there in this national education policy, is already been implemented in many of our schools. And it's only for us, I think it is saying that what we are doing is right. For many, we are happy to support those schools which are kind of coming up and want to implement in its true essence. I think it's big thumbs up for India.
Thank you so much for your answer, ma'am. Now we have Vijay sir, and Vijay sir has been working in the in L&D and human capital area. So with 1 billion people, it is fitting that India should aspire to be a leader. However, what does it mean to be a global leader? Because we are talking about coding. Coding already, India is like one of the superpowers of IT. But still, I've heard that a lot of global companies do not have Indian innovators in the software area. So, Vijay sir, what does it mean to be a global leader in terms of human capital?
Hi everyone. First of all, good evening to everyone.
Good evening.
Now, regarding your question, what does it mean to be a leader? The thing is, if you look at Indian IT or technology industry and what we have done, you will see that primarily it is driven by IT services, right? And in IT services, essentially, you're taking technology which has been developed elsewhere, right? And then kind of using that to create applications, create different programs, etc., for different businesses and education, government, and so on and so forth, right? It is not exactly what I would say innovation in the true sense, right? It is basically kind of taking technologies that have been invented or discovered elsewhere and just kind of applying it. Now, if you want to be a global leader, in my view, what it means is that all the new technologies that are going to come. All the new technologies that are going to that are coming up, which is like whether it's quantum computing or virtual reality or.
मैं यहाँ रिमार्क्स बता रही हूँ, आपसे बात कर रही हूँ, ये कोई वेबिनार अटेंड कर रहा है, यही चलता है ऑनलाइन 3 का.
Can we remove this person, please?
अब फोन करेंगे, दोस्त बताएंगे आपको अच्छे से.
Sorry, everyone.
No, that's perfectly okay. It happens.
There is somebody who's trying to learn here, and somebody's unhappy about joining the webinar. So please carry on.
No, that's perfectly okay. I mean, it happens. It's okay. So what I was saying is, all the new technologies that are, which are being worked on or which are going to become mainstream in the future, whether it's quantum computing, virtual reality, autonomous vehicles, or robotics, or nanotechnology, and all of these areas, right? If we really want to be global leaders, we need to be at a point where we create these innovations, create these technologies. So it's like, just to kind of, we should be the one who are, creating the algorithms for autonomous vehicles. I'll give an example. Let's say if I take AI as an example, right? AI is and one of the components of AI is basically neural networks, right? And in a neural network, there are a lot of different algorithms, right? So in India, you will find that there are a lot of people who can use these algorithms and create predictions, create different tools basis that, and it's primarily coding. But to be a real leader, I think you need to be the person or be the one who creates, let's say, the back propagation, which is used in neural networks in a big way. You should be the one who creates that, right? So I think only then you can, aspire and become a global leader.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, at this point, I don't think we are at that stage where we can, we can say that we are, at the point where we are creating this new technology.
Thank you, sir. Sir, our country has the largest number of software engineers, and some of our, people like Sundar Pichai, Satya Nadella, they're at the top of the global IT giants or global computing giants rather. So still, it says that we are not really innovative. Why do you think we are not really innovative, or a very few of us are innovative in terms of computing?
I'll tell you. I mean, the thing is, one is, of course, it also relates back to my previous answer, which is that okay, the focus has been a lot on taking technologies which have already been invented, and then just applying them, right, rather than creating new technology in the first place. But even then, I think that, there is a more fundamental reason. What I feel, fundamental reason why this is happening in India. There is a big focus on just getting jobs, right? And there's nothing wrong with it. It's absolutely right. Just that what happens is, so I've worked with engineers in India. I've worked with engineers abroad, and there's a big difference. People from who has done his education abroad, in the US or something, or somewhere here, and the difference is that sometimes people learn new technologies to say that, okay, hey, can I get a better job here? Whereas there people from global university. Sorry, there's a lot of echo.
Yes, I think. Hello. There's some congestion.
Yeah, is that better? Can you hear me?
I think it's better, Vijay.
It's better now.
Yeah. So what I was saying is that there's a lot of focus. If I were to look at engineers coming from some of the top universities abroad versus engineers coming from India, and I don't want to like generalize. I mean, there are of course a lot of innovative people in India. I don't want to say that. Get me wrong. But in general, the focus has been, can I get a job, right, in India, and whereas in the US or Europe, other places, the focus is, can I build something new which will fundamentally change? So the perspective is very different. So that is one of the things that could be. But I think there's another point which I think I would like to make, is that not only just this focus on this kind of a perspective, but the other thing is that the application orientation or the ability to do critical thinking, that is probably, in my view, not stressed so much in India. Like, for example, I've gone through the very traditional education that India offers. I was a KV student, and did my engineering and all of that. But what the focus has always been kind of preparing for a test rather than absorbing, internalizing the thought, internalizing the concept, and then thinking through how will I apply it in a certain situation. How will I, how will I, build something new out of what I have learned. So that kind of, so there is that critical thinking and problem solving element of it is somewhere, I think, as much as what it needs to be. And I'm not saying blanket that I'm not saying that nobody does it. It's not true. There are a lot of good schools nowadays who lay a lot of focus on these kind of things. But I'm just saying, if I look at overall, the overall country, probably this is one of the things that would stand out for me.
And she's looking forward to implement that. And she said that a lot has already been implemented by the progressive schools. And we have Vijay sir, who says that we need to be more innovative as coders or as software engineers. And now we have Mr. Praveen, who runs a program and who also has coding as a part of it. Praveen sir, I am asking questions to you all who all are experts in coding. I've also learned coding way back in 90s when I was a school or a college going kid. I have also tried learning coding and I failed. And that's why today I am here asking questions about coding. So, those days we used to have these computer institutes in almost once in each locality we used to have a computer institute. People used to train, us on coding. You used to have organizations like CDAC, MCAs, where everything was taught. Now, why is the need that NEP is advocating this from grade 6? And when we are already superpower in terms of IT and softwares, so Vijay sir says that we need to do more. Can you help us understand what was missing or what is missing so far in computer teaching in our schools?
So, Dhirenji, first of all, thank you for inviting me and having me on the panel. Good evening, everyone.
Thank you, sir.
I think schools have great ICT labs. There is no doubt about it. And most of them have good qualified teachers, computer teachers that are teaching programming in the school level. I mean, we teach a lot of different programs like C++, HTML, Java. We do a lot of different things like that at schools, and we do a good job about it. There is a structured curriculum. We have exams out of it. The students are given some problems to code for. All of that happens. But I think essentially, coding consists of two different but two vital aspects, right? One is the language part of it, the programming language. It's basically like I'm talking to you, so I'm talking to you in English, so I need a language to communicate with you. Similarly, machines require a language in which instruction has to be given to it for it to perform the task. And that part of it is the programming language part of it. I think the second aspect of it is the thinking process that is required to develop a solution to the problem that you are working on, right? I mean, how do you represent a problem? How do you go about it? And so sort of, coding mindset is required there, right? Through our ICT labs, schools have focused quite a bit on the language, right? And not essentially on some of the aspects of the thinking that is involved, that goes behind developing that kind of a code, right? Usually left for undergraduate level and universities and colleges. That's where they try and develop the coding mindset. The thinking process is required to write great code. Sometimes it's good to start early, because by the time these students enter into colleges, they get into the UG courses, they are fairly formed, right? And so you're actually trying to put in a lot of unlearning at that point and then teach them how to go about this thinking. So I think it's important to catch them young and bring that thinking process into play, to ensure that they come up as the right raw material for the universities to work with. I'm aware of a lot of backlash. There's a lot of anger in trying to basically focus on that aspect of coding by the government, by organizations, and all of that. But I think we all can agree that teaching that mindset, teaching that thinking process is an imperative.
Mm-hmm. So, sir, to the best of my understanding, is just coding the only solution?
Only solution for
I mean, in our policy, we have, I see advertisement everywhere, coding this, coding that, and sometimes there are organizations trying to charge, fee to teach coding, and that fee is sometimes more than the annual fee of certain schools. So why just coding?
I think, like I said before in the previous question, I think it's more important to focus on the thinking processes behind coding than coding itself. Coding to me is a tool, right? I mean, it could tomorrow be something else. For all I care, it could be a broomstick. It could be something else. But I think those thinking processes are important. So coding is a tool for us to get to those thinking processes. I think the important point is the programming language focus that we have. When you were in school, I was in school, they used to probably not teach computers at all. When we went to our engineering, some of the schools were still talking about Pascal, right? Now, gone are those days. I mean, people have moved on. C++, we still use a lot of C++, but the world has moved on. Java, then, you have Ruby on Rails now coming in. I don't know, there's a whole lot of different coding, programming languages have come. So the point is that, focusing on coding from a programming language perspective is limiting. Right? I think the more eternal, more important, more fundamental is the mindset and the thinking skills behind it. I think that should be the key.
Mr. Dhiren, can I just come in? I think what Mr. Praveen said is absolutely right. As an educator, I can just say that, coding is just a process. Today it is coding, tomorrow it could be something else. But what are the skills that are needed for coding is more important. And are you teaching those skills through your curriculum? That is so important. And the main skill that is needed is logical reasoning, logical thinking, and the critical thinking skills that we develop in children, whether you're teaching math, English, science, whatever be the subject. Are you teaching that? And the ability to learn new things and the adaptability, the adaptability skills that you're teaching in your children, which is so important. So it is not just about coding today. It could be a completely different language that you're going to teach them tomorrow. Have they got the skills to learn, unlearn, and relearn new things? That is more important. So what, as an educator, what we have seen in, and this is a practical experience I'm talking about, in kindergarten, you find children absolutely free and absolutely willing to learn, and their learning skills are the highest in the kindergarten. But the moment you start introducing 3 languages and you start introducing the sciences in the higher classes, their learning skills actually go down. So as they progress, age-wise, ability-wise, their learning skills are actually going down. So what is education doing to them? Are we bringing down their learning skills? No, that's what we got to stop. That we need to ensure that the enthusiasm and the learning skills that they have in kindergarten is continued right throughout your age, throughout your life, and your ability to learn new things is what is so important. And I think, Mr. Praveen, you hit the nail right on its head.
So what I assume is, or what I conclude is that apart from just coding, you have to focus on various other things. And thinking is learning, unlearning, relearning, and thinking is very important. So let me go to Mr. Vijay, where so we know that we are IT superpower, software superpower, but still we are not innovative. And I think what I understand is that we have to teach them how to learn, unlearn, and also how to think. So apart from coding, Mr. Vijay, what technologies should we focus upon? What other things should we teach them apart from coding?
See, apart from coding, there are a lot of different things that one you could teach, through which you can teach some of this critical thinking skill, etc. Right? And like one could teach design, and which could which can manifest itself in like 3D printing. You could teach different things on Internet of Things, which will will involve definitely some bit of coding, but it will also involve it will also involve hardware.
क्या है इसी को देखते रहो फिर वो परेशानी फिर खड़ी हो जाएंगी काटो दो उसको कचरा उठाने वाले लेके रख के आओ
Bridge, can we do this, please? Can we move on to the lobby, please?
Done, sir. Done, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, Vijay. Every time you come in, there is somebody who is having issues. I'm so sorry. Please carry on.
That's perfectly okay. Yeah, so I was saying that one could look at things like design through and through 3D printing, etc. Internet of Things is something that you could look at. Robotics, I think, again, a very interesting area that one could use, and it would involve both, right? It would involve a bit of coding, it would involve hardware, it would involve all sorts of things, right? So there are a whole host of things that you could potentially do to kind of not just coding. I mean, like, for example, I mean, this is not exactly the, the thing. I mean, the other thing could be just, music, for example. It's a very interesting thing to even create, to make someone very, very creative and, create some of these critical thinking skills also, even through music, it can be done. So the thing is that there are a whole host of opportunities, whole host of areas that where you can pick up and you can use, like like the other panelists have said, the very, very important thing is to pick out this critical thinking skills. So I should just tell you, I've been currently I lead a consulting business in KPMG, and before that I used to lead a similar practice in Accenture. And one of the most important things that we teach any management consultant who comes into who are fresh into management consulting, one of the most important thing that we teach is the structured problem solving, critical thinking, and structured communication. The other three pieces that we teach.
Yeah. So go ahead.
Yeah, that's all I had on this one.
Okay, so we know that academia prepares these kids so that they are industry ready. So we have an academician who's explained us about what the policy has, and we have Mr. Vijay, who's a part of industry, a software industry and learning and development field, and he says what all is needed apart from coding to prepare kids for future. And we have Mr. Praveen, who finds joy in preparing these kids for 21st century skills by Creya. Praveen, all this is very, very complex to a layman like me. Why don't you try and simplify this for us?
Okay. I'll try and take a stab, Dhirenji. It's the way I think, the point I think the panelists have been making so far are there are two different aspects, and kids need to have exposure to both those aspects, right? The one aspect is exposure to technology, right? Vijay has been speaking about different technologies that you could potentially introduce them to, depending on the age group they belong to and stuff like that, right? And the other aspect of it is the thinking process. He talked about critical thinking. He talked about structured communication, all of that, right? So I believe, in a nutshell, if we basically look at it, there are four aspects that we should focus on. Aspect number one are the technologies, right? Aspect number two, getting them to, in giving them experiences to inculcate what I would like to call as 21st century skills, which are nothing but your critical thinking, creative thinking, collaboration, and communication skills. Number three aspect is developing computational skills in children, right? Computational skills is a process for solving problems and getting that in and making them understand and making them experts on it goes a long way in preparing them for both work and college. I think the last aspect is the design thinking, getting them to practice and make it part of themselves. The whole framework of design thinking, which is a human-centered framework to define problems and to build solutions that work. I think if we can focus on those four simple aspects, the whole complexity goes away, right? Just focus on these four, and any educator knows exactly that they have taught the student to define the exact problem, identify the right solution, and correct process to develop the solution. We have taught the student to be truly successful in any discipline they choose.
So far, whatever we have discussed, I understand that if we need to, be ahead of the world in terms of computers, computing, coding is necessary. And apart from coding, we also need to teach them how to think afresh, design thinking, and rather develop their thinking skills. Now, problem solving, critical thinking, empathy, and creative thinking, these are stuff which, other areas of our education deals with. Can you tell us what exactly is computational thinking and design thinking, Praveen sir?
Oh, okay. Computational thinking is a process that computer scientists use to think about problems. Fundamentally, it has about 4 steps, if you will, right? The first step is decomposition. Step number 2 is pattern recognition. Step number 3 is abstraction, and step number 4 is algorithm design. Right. So I'll briefly talk with an example of all these 4 steps, so we understand what computational thinking is. Right. The first one, decomposition. It is about breaking down a complex problem into smaller, manageable parts. Right. We use this inherently in our daily lives. For example, Dhiren, if you were to invite me and my my family to your home for a party in the evening, right? So and this is the first time you are interacting with us, so you would potentially think something like this, right? So you would look at who are all coming, what are the different age groups, and then you will basically figure out what are the meal preferences, veg, non-veg, are there any prohibited foods, preferences, all of that, right? And then you break the menu to think of starters, there is a main course, potentially desserts, and what sort of drinks I would make. And then you go through and fill each of them. So you took the whole complex problem of how does an evening dinner look like, and you break it down into, okay, let me not think about the whole thing, but let's talk about starters, then the main course, then desserts and drinks, and what other aspects I need to consider to be able to drill down and then decide what goes into it. That's, to me, a very simple example of how decomposition thinking works. Right? That's step number 1. The number 2 thing is pattern recognition. The name, as the name indicates, it's straightforward, right? Recognizing patterns. Patterns, I think the important point to remember is patterns are not just about shared similarities, but they could be also about shared differences, right? Very, very useful skill to make sense of a lot of information that is out there, right? And put it into some structure. I'll give you an example, right? These are days of pandemic. Most of us are stuck in the home, and the only form of entertainment is Netflix. For a lot of the money that is not coming in as salary is going towards paying for the Netflix feed these days, right? Now, you must have observed as you watch Netflix, it recommends shows and movies based on what you have watched and based on your interests, right? That's a clear example of how pattern recognition works. The third aspect of computational thinking is abstraction. Abstraction involves determining what characteristics of the problem are important and what are not, and filtering out that are not important. For example, a person wants to identify the different states on the Indian political map, let's say, right? I want to know where are the various maps with respect to each other, right? Now, you don't need to give me a physical map or a topographic map with all the rivers, lakes, mountains, and all that sort of detail in it. You just need to give me a political map, right? So this is an example of abstraction where you hide the information on the map, right? Which is required for a different purpose probably, but for the purpose of me identifying what these states are, how they are with relative to each other, you just need to give me a political map. And being able to make those decisions of what is important, what is not important is abstraction. Right? I'm using deliberately simple examples, non-technical examples, so that all of us can relate to. But when it comes to computer science, the same thinking processes can be applied for more complex problems. The fourth element is algorithmic design. Right? In algorithm is nothing but a plan where you get a step-by-step instructions to resolve a problem. Right? A great example of it is, if I sit down to cook my favorite dish and, I don't know how to do it, so I will basically call up somebody for a recipe and I get a written recipe. A written recipe is an example of algorithm. It's just a sequence of steps and instructions for me to go make something or resolve a problem, right? So typically, to sum up, there are 4 aspects: decomposition, pattern recognition, abstraction, and algorithm design. As you can see from all of this, none of these skills are specific to any technology, and nor they do have to be taught by a computer science teacher only, right? These skills have applications not just in computer science but elsewhere as well.
Mhm. So we know that the kids, as Madam Lalita said, that at the young age they are eager to learn. The degree of the rate at which they can learn is also higher, and it's not just about coding, but all these thinking skills are also needed if we really want to be different and innovative in our software field. Now, I think there are about 5-6 people waiting in lobby. I think, have logged the meeting. Bridge, can we allow some of them, please?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So. Madam Lalita was saying, can you mute him? These things keep. Our apologies for all this, but yes. So. You are saying that various other things are needed, like computational thinking, design thinking, critical thinking, and at the young age we can teach them. And what Praveen sir is saying, that it's not just that only computers teachers can teach this. If you have to go beyond coding and make a difference, you have to go beyond coding, and maybe we'll have to start teaching them at the young age. So my next question is to Madam Lalita Suresh. Ma'am, how can we, teach these things at the young age to these students by computing teachers who do not teach computing, and all these, technology and interdisciplinary things? Can you throw some light on that?
Okay. Firstly, I want to talk about the upside of the COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, COVID caught all of us unaware. In the month of March, did we ever think that the schools are going to be online? Believe me, I'm going to quote a personal example. A year and a half ago, I wanted to have an online school for my children. I said, 1 day a week, you will have an online school. I faced so much resistance from my parents. Okay, they said, no, the eyes will get spoiled. Children won't study. They will not do this. They will not do this. Why are we paying fees? We are paying fees for the children to come to school, and you want to introduce this. I had to take a back step, and I said, okay, the time will come. I never thought the time will come so soon. Okay, now the situation has reversed. The school has opened in the UAE, and children don't want to come to school because they're so used to studying from home. And every teacher is teaching using computers. And is it all those teachers computer teachers? No. They're using various strategies. They're using various tools, technology tools, to enhance their own subject areas. And this is very, very important because every teacher now has the skills to use technology to teach the subject better. And I'm now thinking, do we now need a computer period? We traditional schools all have one period of computing, right from lower grade 1 to grade 10. Now, is there a necessity to have that lesson, that period? Or should that period be given to something which enhances creativity, which enhances thinking skills, which enhances learning skills in children? So it is not about technology being taught by, technology can be taught by anybody. The current situation, COVID has proved that technology and the use of various applications can be taught by anybody. Yes, the computer language can be taught only by computer science teachers. That is perfectly all right. But the main aspect of using technology in the learning of subjects can be done by anybody. It is all about integration of various skills, integration of subjects, that is so important. We already have art integration. CBSE has brought in art integration. How do you integrate art in every subject? And that is going on in full steam. We already have, a year ago, they talked about reading literacy. And we focus on reading literacy not only in languages, but we focus on reading literacy in teaching of math, teaching of science, teaching of every other subject. Reading literacy has become an important aspect. Why can't we have mathematical literacy in all subjects? Why can't we have computational technology in all subjects? It's all about integration. And scientifically, if you see, learning is all happening when the neurons come together, isn't it? So it's the same way when we talk about neural science. It's all about bringing these aspects of learning together, integrating them, and making children understand that subjects are not boxed. It's all about life that is being integrated, and understanding that integration and how it happens. And that improves the intelligence in the children as well.
So we need to.
I hope, yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. So we need to have an integrated approach, and apart from coding, these skills are also needed. So educators who are here, it's not just coding; it's way beyond coding. If we need to excel, we need to excel what the industry globally demands, not just not just those people who are just doing repetitive work in software or technology services. But if we need to be innovators, we need to change the entire mindset, and even non-computer teachers need to contribute. Now I'm forced to come to Praveen sir again. Praveen sir, running an organization where you have an integrated approach of teaching. Tell me, how can a non-computer teacher contribute in design thinking and computational thinking? Please give me some layman. I'm absolutely a layman, sir. So give me an example in a layman's language.
Okay. Can I share my screen? I would like to show a quick slide if possible.
Sure, sir. You are a co-host. You can do that.
Okay. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, sir, I can.
Okay.
I can. Yes.
I believe what the screen, what I'm showing on the screen, is a story of a very popular story of Hansel and Gretel. Right? It's a German folk tale. A lot of us are aware of it. Right? It's a story where the farmer and he has two children, brother Hansel and his sister is Gretel. He becomes so poor that stepmother forces the father to leave the children in the forest and come back for lack of food. So they decide to take them to the forest and leave them there so they can fend for themselves. The children overhear it. So in the morning, when the father is leading them into the forest, the child, the brother Hansel, leaves out a trail of breadcrumbs so that he can follow back home. Right? Now, what's interesting is, I know that with the pandemic, a lot of us also shop online. Right? We shop for apparel, for grocery, all of that. So I've just put a screenshot of people shopping on Flipkart. Not that I like Flipkart, but I just use that as an example. Basically, if somebody were buying it, they were trying to buy footwear and then they were trying to buy flats. What you would see is a directional pointer to me, right? You could see it says home, footwear, women's footwear, and flats. What is interesting is, in computer science, these are also called breadcrumbs. Right, and are in fact inspired from the breadcrumb story of Hansel and Gretel. Right? I guess it's tend to be interrupted.
Mr. Inu Anand. One second, I'll have to.
Done, sir.
Okay, fair enough. Now, the point I'm trying to make is, the fear of mathematics, fear of computers is a bigger thing than actually teaching them the thinking skills that are involved, the processes that are involved. I think it's the whole fear, right? I think the big role that non-computer science teachers can play, can bring in, is by demystifying technology and making it really simple with everyday examples like this. To me, that's a powerful role that these teachers can play. Now, that's one example. I would like to show one more screen, right? This is an example of how computational thinking aspects could be integrated into literature class, right? So, by the way, this is an example of a program of a course curriculum that we have written for IIIT Hyderabad when they wanted to implement computational thinking in Navodaya schools. So it's part of that. So approved by IIIT for all that it matters. The exercise here is about there is a profile of a poet that is given, and there are two poems. The student doesn't know which poem is written by the poet, right? So the student has to read the profile, and based on the data that he or she gleans from the profile, has to basically match it and pick it from the poem, right? So they end up using, for example, this is a profile of a Indian story writer, Anushka Ravishankar. She is a author of children books, and she is known for her, nonsensical prose, verse, and has an incredible sense of quirky. Right? So as you see, there are 4 parameters that you can glean: Indian, children book author, quirky writer, has a sense of rhythm, nonsensical words, and then while you read through those poems, you start looking for those aspects of it. So right there, you have used the techniques of decomposition and pattern matching in solving this exercise. Right? When we write, stuff like you read a book and you're asked to write a book review. That's another example of bringing in the aspects of thinking processes that we are talking about. Right? Abstraction is that's a classic example of application of abstraction. Right? So integrating these kind of things, giving more value, more time in your curriculum for this, is the other way. Right? We talked about demystifying. We talked about directly integrating. Third aspect I would like to bring in, right? You have phenomenally good STEM labs, maker labs, you have computer science labs, right? So, start, like Lalita madam was talking about, break down the barriers, go out, talk to your computer science teacher, talk to your technology teacher, figure out activities that would enable you to bring in application of it to further your disciplinary knowledge. Here is an example, right? This is a 3D printing example, right? So I'm sure that if a 3D printing lab, in the Atal lab, in a Creya lab, students would have basically learned 3D printing. So if you could potentially frame a problem and then basically go in as a history teacher to explore monuments, right? 3D print the monument, develop a podcast to explain the significance of the monument, its history, all of that. That is a powerful interdisciplinary connection between technology and the discipline that you're talking about. So these 3 examples are good ways for us to think of how non-computer science, other subject teachers can essentially bring in the thinking processes, the coding mindset into all the classrooms and not just the computer.
Okay. So now I go back to Madam Lalita. Ma'am, can you give us more examples or simplify how you adopt all this in your classrooms?
Sorry, can you come again? How?
So Praveen sir explained us that how a history teacher or any other teacher, a language teacher, can inculcate these skills in our children. So can you give us some pointers on how schools can adopt this approach?
Okay. There are a number of ways in which schools can adapt all these skills in school itself. And let me give you examples that we have done in my own school, and that would be the best examples, I would presume, because we have seen it being implemented, and we have seen success, and we have seen the outcomes. And the outcomes in children have been so great, and that gives us the success of implementation as well. The first thing that we have introduced is a STEAM curriculum. And we have introduced STEAM curriculum for the last couple of years. And we have seen the tremendous growth in the thinking skills of children, their application skills. So what we did after 2 years of implementing STEAM curriculum, where even young children as young as grade 3 and 4 were talking of angle of inclination, and at what angle of inclination will increase the speed of a car, things like that. So at grade 3 and grade 4, they were talking about language like this of angle of inclination. So which now we have introduced problem-based learning, where we just gave them the idea of you create your question, you do your research, you bring out the solutions. So having introduced the STEAM curriculum, the next step was to introduce the problem-based learning, where the children applied what they had learned in the STEAM curriculum into everyday problems, and they created everyday problems. They found what needed solutions in this world, and they used their ideas, their skill sets, their interests in identifying the problem, researching on it, and producing a solution. And researching on it is not just Googling it and finding the answer, but actual research being done. And this was group work. So we also talked about collaboration. So there was collaborative learning. And there was, again, use of technology, where they had to upload their stuff, present it to the people, to the judges. And they were also pitching of their product, selling their product. So we introduced, there was entrepreneurship skills in it, because entrepreneurship is an absolutely new skill that is necessary in every child. So we did that. The next aspect that we have also introduced is the reading skills. We also found that many of our children in the Gulf had, they live in small apartments, not so much focus on reading and things like that. So we found that the reading skills might probably need a little push in the school. So we introduced a program from Australia, which had books that are leveled, and it also based on the Middle East region. So the stories were based on Middle East region. And therefore the children could identify with the surroundings. So it talked about camels, it talked about pearl diving, it's about everything to do with the Gulf region, the environment of the Gulf region. So the children could identify to the stories of the books. And then it also had a reading assessment. And the children were based on the assessments, we could identify the levels of the children. And now the children are so keen that I want to improve my level of reading. And so they have begun to read more. And so this has enhanced the reading skills, and the enhancement in reading skills also brings about an enhancement in their writing skills, their speaking skills, and so on. Then the next aspect that we did was introduced how can technology be implemented in everyday lessons. Of course, currently with the COVID, technology is integrated into every lessons. But even before COVID, we had a method by which we could identify at what level is technology integrated with in our everyday lessons. It's very important that the children had to do a lot of, the teachers had to implement it at the highest level on the Bloom's taxonomy. It's not just about using technology. It's about, are we creating something new in technology? We need to look at that as well. So it was very important that all these aspects of, it's not just about teaching English, math, science, but we had to integrate the whole learning process and how it was done. And I think starting off with the introduction of STEAM curriculum, the problem-based learning, introduction of problem-based learning, the introduction of reading programs in the school, all enhance the learning skills in children. And now I can very, very confidently say that the learning skills in KG and the learning skills in the senior classes can we bridged that gap. We really have bridged that gap.
Come out with a coding certificate, that is not enough. There are a lot of things which has to be done if we want to be industry ready in terms of IT and software. What industry demands for. So, is there a framework that school leaders or people like us can understand and refer and can develop this kind of learning? Praveen sir, could you tell us this? Do you have some framework like this?
When you refer to what they have implemented in their school, I think the crux is, as a pedagogy, there is this pedagogy called integrative STEM, where we talk about giving children problems that are set in the context of technology or engineering, and then they solve those problems using concepts from other disciplines like maths, science, English language arts, social sciences, and stuff like that, right? So, and you give them those problems where children apply their disciplinary knowledge to solve technology problems, right? And actually solve problems which are real world problems for which they use design thinking framework to develop the solution. So, adapting that in your problem development, in your project work, in your labs, in your, technology and STEM labs, in your maker labs, getting that framework done of integrative STEM design thinking is probably the key for us to find the right, sandbox for children to develop these thinking skills.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, sir. So, if I have to sum up what we can take as outcome of this whole discussion, that it's not just coding, but we need to create an environment of design thinking, computational thinking, critical thinking, creative thinking, if we want to be a global leader in IT, ITES, and software. And it is not just those few online lessons of coding which we need to learn. Otherwise, there's not going to be much change. What we need to do is to change the entire mindset and get everybody in the school, any teacher, to come together and develop these kind of skills in the child if we want them to excel well in the future. Now we have now we move on to the second aspect of this discussion. We have few people who had asked us questions, and there are a few questions which we have shortlisted. And in fact, let me tell you, we also have, one of the lucky winners is going to get a Google Mini from us, for their questions. So there are a few questions which I would want to ask on behalf of people if they are not available. But we have Dr. Vishal Mohandas Panikar, who's a teacher at Kokilaben Dhirubhai Ambani Reliance Foundation School in Jamnagar. Dr. Panikar, are you there? You can unmute yourself and speak. Maybe Dr. Panikar missed the session, but his question is interesting, and I feel I would want Lalita ma'am to answer this. What Dr. Panikar asks is, after implementation of NEP 2020, what are the chances of coaching center being abandoned and written examination taking a back foot?
Okay. Coaching centers being abandoned and written examinations taking back foot. Okay. See, the NEP 2020, it's bringing sweeping changes to higher education. Okay, we have already seen there are lots of policy changes with the CBSE curriculum as well. CBSE has just declared, in fact, just before this session started, I was going through the latest circular from CBSE that has released a sample question paper for grade 10 and 12. And I'm so happy to inform you is that what we are discussing today here is what I see in those question papers that is going to be implemented this year. So it has brought in sweeping changes in the pattern. It is focusing more on understanding rather than on memory. So the whole concept of teaching, learning, and assessments is being changed by National Policy 2020, if it is implemented in its full essence. Written exams should take a back seat. As an educator, I think there is too much focus on marks and grades rather than the real understanding of the child. How do we measure the real understanding of the child is what we need to focus. And the question papers should not, we so often have repeated questions. This question will surely come, and the children memorizing that. And we really don't know whether the child has understood the concept or is it just memory and written down over there. So I think with the pattern that I'm seeing now, it is more focused on what the child knows and focusing on the deeper understanding rather than superficial understanding. And if that is being implemented at school levels, I'm sure the university levels will also have to change. The admission criteria will have to change at the university level. And if the admission criteria changes, the whole concept of coaching classes will go away. It will take some time, but I think it should go away if everybody focus on learning and rather than deep learning rather than superficial learning. And of course, examination is necessity because that's what is going to differentiate. But everything with the variety of options available, there's no need for children to say that I need this marks to get into this. There will be options available for children based on their interest. So I think that is very, very important. And the pressure of high marks should go away from the society.
Thank you so much, ma'am. In fact, we had a lot of questions. A lot of people asked about changes in the admission criteria, age criteria, the salaries being changing for teachers. But we have taken questions which are relevant for this particular discussion. So there are a lot of questions which we have not been able to take. But yes, there are a few questions which are pertinent to this particular forum. So my next question is from Dr. Deepika Rupert Gardner, who is a faculty at BVRIT Hyderabad College of Engineering for Women. And Dr. Gardner, if you are there, you can please unmute yourself and ask your question. And I would want Praveen sir to answer this. I think Dr. Gardner is here. Yes, ma'am.
Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you are.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. What I wanted to ask Praveen sir, yes, was like, how can the national education policy implement the creativity, critical thinking skills, and coding? How will they be implemented when, you need teachers to learn this first to be able to teach. What I find is that teachers are incapable of doing that. Most of the times it's happening that they do not have that understanding. So how is the implementation going to be?
Praveen
Thank
sir.
you. That's the question.
Praveen sir, over to you.
Yeah. Ma'am, it's a very big question that you have asked. How is the implementation going to be? Obviously, the implementation is going to differ from installation to installation. And what I mean by that is from school to school. But in general, I think there are the aspect of willingness of the school and the school's ecosystem to implement it is the most important thing. Now, if it is there, then aspect of it I don't think is all that difficult. right? I mean, we have been doing this kind of programs. We work with teachers from multiple disciplines. I have actually, in some of our schools, a Sanskrit teacher teaching STEM program. We have an arts teacher, I mean, the fine arts teacher teaching robotics in one of our schools. So I don't think learning is that much of a problem. I think it's more of the willingness and the openness on part of the individual that is probably more important. And if it is there, I think the most difficult part is to say, look, I don't know the answer to it, right? But I'll find it alongside with you. With Google, with a lot of opportunities to learn online with structured programs that school is willing to bring in. I think the learning is not that much difficult. It's actually the individual himself or herself. So it's up to the teachers to make this a big success or a big failure. And everything in this country's future actually rests on the shoulders of those teachers.
Thank you, sir. So my next question is for Vijay, sir. And that's been asked by Madam Munira Rangwala, who's the principal at MSB Educational Institute in Mumbai. And she's saying, as life skills development is the key for today's Gen Z, she's saying, not Gen X or Gen Y, she's saying Gen Z. How will learning coding take this forward?
It's a very interesting question. Coding, first of all, the one obvious thing that coding will teach you is critical thinking skills, ability to analyze, ability to decompose a particular problem or a solution into its constituent parts in the minutest parts and being able to solve for it, right? So those are very, very important skills that once you start coding, you will learn that. Second, a very important thing is that more and more when you coding, when you're doing one is, of course, you can do it yourself, but nowadays a lot of the coding happens in a collaborative fashion, right? Like for example, my son he's in class 8 and he's part of a group of kids all across the globe, and he just met them online and they're working on creating a game, right? So it's something that it can teach you collaboration in a very in a very interesting sort of way. The other thing is sometimes it will also teach you how to take the initiative, right? So and the thing is that when you start coding, it is not going to it's not that you code something and you just get it right the first time. There are a lot of things. It's not coding in all sense is not easy. You have to try you have to try it again and again. So it can build I think it can build character as well. It can teach you patience. It can teach you not to give up so easily. And if you're actually doing a project, in all likelihood, you'll probably have to be doing the entire coding project within a certain time frame, and that can be a great teacher for time management as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Thank you, sir. Next question, we've actually clubbed 3 questions, and this is from Madam Sonia Jinkin, who's teacher at Army Public School, Kirki, Pune, and Mr. Mufaddal, who's principal at MSB Educational Institute in Bangalore, and Akanksha Jaiswal, madam, who's teacher at Eduba Mapakam, Chennai, if I can pronounce it right. So I request Madam Sonia Jingan to please unmute yourself and ask the question. I can see Madam Sonia Jingan is here. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening to everyone. Thank you so much. So my question is that what is it that the teachers today, what competencies does a teacher need today so that she's well prepared a year later or two to be able to handle all these kind of situations which are going to come up? So how do we really train ourselves or make ourselves competent enough so that we can take it on head on?
Thank you, ma'am. A teacher asking a question, how can she learn? Praveen sir, would you want to answer this?
Sure. Actually, I would like to again show a quick slide that I have in presentations. That would be helpful, I guess. So let me try and share.
Yes, sir.
So here is a slide that I have which talks about the various traits that a teacher needs to have to be able to be a good teacher in the current times, right? I mean, 21st century times. I mean, the students that we have today are digital natives. They are all 21st century learners. And a teacher has to be a 21st century educator. And I think the core traits of that are clearly well enunciated in the teaching community. I think first and foremost, they have to be collaborators. They have to be sharing, enhancing. They have to basically work with others. They have to go between disciplines. I think the second most important thing is they have to be curators, right, of content. There's lots of content out there, and it's widely available. So people that are able to look at and continuously bring in new stuff, new perspectives, interesting way of saying things, those that is probably the second important trait. I think the third important trait is, I don't know if we have read this book, Sapiens, and I'm sure most of us have. I think technology is going to be an integral part of our lives. Whether we decide to teach coding in school or not, you can't escape technology today. We all wake up to the chimes of WhatsApp in our home. I don't have WhatsApp, but my wife has. So I have to wake up to the chimes of WhatsApp. And so you can't avoid technology. It is all around you. So fluency in technology is something you can't escape, right? I mean, I know that when I say this, I've also heard people talk about, we haven't learned technology, but I go back to what Mrs. Lalita Suresh was sharing earlier. Nobody has taught online before, but today most teachers in this country, and I'm not talking about the premier schools, but I'm talking about across all schools in this country have adapted technology in some way or fashion to be able to bring classes online. So learning technology is another key attribute, right? I think also what's important is you have to be a continuous learner. You should have awareness of various approaches, various pedagogies out there, and try and bring some of them back into your classroom. And I think also you have to basically be a great experimenter. You should try out, not be afraid to fail. Let go of this whole notion that you are the receptacle of all the knowledge in the world, right? It's okay. I mean, you don't know, it's okay. Just being comfortable with the fact that we don't know everything and we can learn alongside our children, alongside our students. These, I think, are the key attributes of a great 21st century teacher that would make the vision of NEP 2020 really possible.
Thank you,
Can I just add one more attribute that a teacher must have? It's the ability to understand every child. Because gone are the days where you teach to you pitch your lesson over there and assume that every child is understanding that lesson. No, the ability of a teacher to meet the needs of the varied needs in the class is equally important. And technology is there to support you in this. So how you use your technology to meet the varied needs is very, very important as well.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Praveen sir. And the next question is asked by Madam Neha Sinha, who's an independent consultant from Mumbai. Madam Sinha, I see that you are here. Can you unmute yourself and ask a question?
Hi. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are, ma'am. Please go ahead.
Thanks for the opportunity to ask the question to such eminent panelists. And I have been following the design thinking program from KPMG, and this is an amazing opportunity to have Sir here. My question is that recently I've been exposed to designing a curriculum for coding, and I gave it a try, and in that I actually failed to do that, but in that I gained a lot of perspective on computational thinking. And I want to ask all of you, and you can choose to answer me, is why there is not much emphasis on computational thinking in the NEP, whereas we do have mentions of critical thinking, design thinking, and all that. And there is this sudden introduction of coding at grade 6, which has led to a spurt of companies coming up with coding programs for parents and children, but not building up computational thinking through K to 5. How do you see this in NEP, and how do you see a solution to this?
Ma'am, I would like to answer that question because I have been also doing my research on NEP and what it says, what it not. And more I read, the feeling gets stronger that I know very limited about NEP. But NEP is a very broad document, and what we have got as the policy is a framework. It's not really the entire thing what these people have done. So yes, you're right that computational thinking word might not be there, but I think design thinking and creative thinking, critical thinking, all these things are a part of the whole thing. And the reason why we are doing this samvad interaction is exactly this: that people are trying to rule the market with just one word, coding. And here we did this whole exercise just to make you all aware that it's not those 20, 30, 40 hours of online classes of coding which will make all the difference. The computer institutes in 90s have done exactly that, taught coding which was relevant in those era. But we have end up becoming repetitive workers rather than independent and original thinkers and innovators in the IT and software space. So yes, the take what we should have out of this particular whole exercise is that the proper emphasis should be given on computational thinking, design thinking, critical thinking, and being innovative, not just the word coding. I hope I answer your question, ma'am.
Sir, can I just make a small addition to this?
Please, sir.
Yeah. Dhirenji, I think NEP document does mention computational thinking. I'm not sure the section, but I believe that it does mention computational thinking as a key literacy that has to be brought in alongside critical thinking, alongside ethical and moral reasoning, all of that, right? Problem solving, all of those skills. I remember it clearly talking about computational thinking being a key aspect that it needs to bring in. Now, I'm not sure how many times it talks about it, all of that, but I have read computational thinking as a key element itself.
Okay, so
can I also add here, Mr. Praveerji, you also spoke about the 4 aspects of computational thinking of decomposition, pattern recognition, abstraction, and algorithmic design. And I think these 4 areas are covered in different aspects in the national education policy. In terms of critical thinking, in terms of breaking down the curriculum into the needs of meeting the needs of the children. So all this is there. Maybe the exact terminology is not used, but the real aspects of it is definitely there in the NEP.
Next we have Dr. Janvi Rai, who is the principal at St. Xavier's English High School and Junior College, Thane. She has a question. Dr. Rai, if you're there, you can ask your question. can see Dr. Janvi Rai in the panel, in the discussion. Her question was, can coding be used for integrating the learning of other subjects in an effective manner? Praveen sir, would you mind answering this?
Sure. Coding can coding can be used for integration of other subjects. Is that the question?
Yes, yes.
Yes, I mean, I think
you answered that.
We gave a couple of examples. We talked about it as well, right? Coding and technologies can definitely be used for integrating multiple other subjects and brought in. I mean, we actually even do it today without realizing we do it, right? When you basically have children develop PowerPoint, that's a rudimentary form of technology education you're bringing in. Processing and word processing, all of those are productivity tools. You are basically introducing them to technology. When you get them to make your podcasts, your digital movies and stuff like that, on documentaries or interviews and stuff like that, you are teaching them digital literacies that you can integrate with other subject disciplines. So there's a lot of scope for technology integration. There's a lot of scope for developing integration between coding as well with other subjects. I'll give you an example of how coding can be brought in. Let's say that you are teaching them how to build a game. Right now, if I basically have a project which talks about, this is a game that wants to talk about, say SDGs, right? And you build a game around it. You have brought in some form of moral education, some form of teaching around what is UN's SDGs and bringing it to the gaming of it. So there are opportunities to integrate, and you just need to find them. You have to plan, sit with your computer science teacher, your technology teacher, and plan out those sessions. And I think that would be key. So opportunities will be.
Minutes. We'll take two more questions. And the next person to ask the question is Dr. Swaroop Datta, who is principal of MSM English School, Malkapur in Nandura district, Buldhana district. Dr. Datta, you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thank you, sir. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are. Go ahead.
Right. In fact, my question has already been answered in the session, but I would like to refer to three documents. One is the document in 2014 published by Harvard School of Leadership, which talked about the 21st century skills. Then the 2014 World Economic Forum, which talked about futuristic skills. And finally, in 2014 as well, the T5 nations, which had a 9-point agenda where they had a skill called coding, teaching coding to the children of 7 years to 14 years. And in that, they actually changed the agenda when they finally published their proceedings. They changed the coding into computational thinking. So what I wanted to ask is, by learning coding alone, will there be any job prospect for the child in future? Because it's going to be a very common skill and will not be a differentiator. Or, the school should start paying more attention to this computational thinking rather than teaching coding. Will that have any sense at all in the job market in 21st century, coding alone as such?
Praveen sir, would you want to answer this?
Sure. I think the point is very well made, sir. I think you're absolutely right in saying that there are skills which are mentioned and they have already undergone a change, right? Like you said, we have already agreed that we need to go beyond coding. We need to decode the NEP, so to speak, right? That's one aspect. But the other aspect is it is important to use the tools that are available today and teach skills which will be useful tomorrow. Because I have not seen the future. I don't think any of us can dare to say what future will be like, right? Today's future, we are talking about, You lost a hand, it's okay. We will 3D print your part for it. Don't worry about it. No big shakes. It's just a hand. We are talking about bioprinted vaccines. We are talking about Mayflower, which is a ship that is driving itself, which is floating itself across Atlantic as we speak. Okay, so the future is changing so fast. So we don't know what is going to be relevant, what is not going to be relevant. I think the key is to make sure we pick up what we have.
Bridge, can we to the needful?
The key is we pick up what we have today and then basically create learning experiences in schools such that we teach them skills which are eternal. Right? We talk about 21st century skills. We talk about critical thinking. So critical thinking was as important during the days when we were in the cave. Imagine, right? I mean, who figured out that, how to use fire, how to basically use an arrow, who figured out how to make dal? I mean, that is some vegetable that is deep down in the earth. You picked it and you put it in your mouth. It's not edible, and somebody figured out a way to make it into a dish that you could eat. All these skills were used from those times. They are relevant today, and they'll continue to be relevant for future. So we just have to focus on teaching what is eternal using the tools we have today.
Thank you, sir. So now we have our last question. And after that, we announce who's that lucky winner for Google Mini. And the last question is asked by Mr. Ashish Vijayvargi, who is the principal at Nirja Modi School, Chittorgarh, Rajasthan. Mr. Vijayvargi, if you are there, please ask the question. No, Ashish is not there. So the question what he asked was, how will it be incorporated in the school curriculum? Now, schools have great constraints of timing and allotment of periods. What will be reduced, compromised to have entry of coding in the daily schedule of classes? Who better than Lalita ma'am to answer this? Ma'am, please.
See, we need to understand that students learn very differently from what we learned earlier. Okay, I mean, even we are learners and we are learning in the process. And as Mr. Praveen rightly put, there are times when we should be able to say that, yes, I am learning with you. And what more, we have seen that in COVID happening. Sometimes there are technologies that the children are teaching us on how to use it in Zoom or Teams or whatever platform that we are using. So children know so much more than us. So it's perfectly all right. And also we need to understand that gone are the days where we have to teach the textbook from A to Z. It is not necessary to teach everything to children. You have to complete the content, but not necessarily teach them. There's a difference there. Okay, so teachers need to be smart and think about what needs to be taught and what needs to be completed in a different way. So there are different ways in which the curriculum can be completed and create time for yourself. And as I said earlier, I will still stick to that. COVID is a great teacher and it has taught us creativity in the teaching strategies. It has given us opportunities to use technology more in the teaching and the learning process in the form of assessments. Why not use it to create those time in the school schedule and implement it in the best way so that the national education policy can be implemented in its true essence within the school curriculum, within the school time, and everybody benefits from that. So I don't think it is a major challenge in terms of time, because I'm sure teachers will find ways in which we can implement this in a best possible manner. We just need to realize that we need to stop spoon feeding the children by giving them notes, by giving them question answers. Those days are gone. Those days are gone. We got to adapt ourselves.
And what you said, we teachers are also learners, and we also need to learn, what it takes to be a teacher in 21st century.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
So before we now announce our winner of Google Mini. Before that, I would like to thank everybody who's there, all the panelists, Praveen sir, Venki sir, Padmaja ma'am and Madhvi ma'am from Creya, and Bridge, Himanshu, Abhishek from Life Educare, who really worked hard in last 7-8 days to ensure that we have a seamless show here. And as put by, rightly put by Madam Lalita, that we teachers are learners too. We also need to learn. So the lucky winner is actually given this Google Mini in that spirit only, that the teacher has to be a learner. And the person who gets this Google Mini is Madam Sonia Jingan, because she has asked the question, what competencies does a teacher need to develop to make the NEP a success?